Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Kirsty. I am 25. I live in Adelaide with my dog, my husband Hayden, and our beautiful 6-month-old daughter Harper. And I decided it was time to finally tell my birth story. I did make a caption of a very rough, small, condensed version of my birth story on my Instagram. So if you want to have a look on there, that does have like the basis of my birth story. But I just feel like telling it in real life, like being able to explain it properly, is so different. Drop. Good boy. Now, I will preface that if you are looking for a beautiful, happy, natural, easy birth story, this is not the one for you. I did not have the best birth ever, and it did not quite go to plan. But the end result's the same. I got my perfect little baby and she is just the light of my life. We're also going to ignore that my hair's still wet. She's currently napping, and when you're a mum, you only get certain windows in which you can film things when they're napping. So I have showered and done my makeup, but I was not doing my hair. It's 39 degrees today in Adelaide, so this is what we're living with. I might do a very quick debrief of like what my pregnancy was like, because I do feel like that sort of sets up the scene for my birth. So I had a terrible pregnancy. In the first trimester, I lost 7 kilos because I was sick every day. I think if I had gone to the doctors, I definitely would have been diagnosed with hyperemesis. But for some reason, I just didn't do that, which I'm going to have a do what I say, not as I do, and recommend to anyone who is severely vomiting or severely nauseous all day every day to seek professional help, because I definitely should have. I literally threw up like constantly. I couldn't eat anything. My appetite was the smallest it has ever been. I pretty much threw up everything I ate. Poor Hayden would literally make dinner. I would have 3 bites of a burger and then vomit it and not be able to finish it. So that was how my pregnancy started, whilst I was trying to hide it. We did tell people pretty early. I announced at 11 weeks, but by then all of our closest friends knew anyway. I think because I have a past with miscarriage. If you're not aware of that, I will link the video down below, but we did miscarry before getting pregnant with Harper. We told people very early, just because for me personally, not only am I an open book and I talk about everything anyway, but it was nicer for people to already know we were pregnant and be able to support us if anything were to happen, than to later just find out like, oh, I'm miscarrying. So yeah, we decided to tell people pretty early this time. Around 6-7 weeks, most of our friends sort of knew. As we saw them, we would tell them basically. So yeah, my first trimester, I was pretty much just sick all day, every day. I was so tired. My second trimester, I was still sick. Like I was pretty much sick my whole pregnancy, but the third trimester I was less sick. So I was vomiting up until birth, but in the last sort of 3 months it was only a couple of times a week. But up until 20 weeks it was like all day, every day just about. I had a little bit of relief in like from 17 weeks onwards, but it was still every day, and I was tired my whole pregnancy. I did not get that second trimester like glow about me. I was very exhausted, really down, but the happiest ever at the same time, knowing that I was carrying our rainbow baby. Third trimester, I was pretty much just in pain. I have mentioned on my channel recently, I am doing a lot to try and prevent having a pregnancy like my last one, and I'm trying to really focus on my health and losing some weight and being the healthiest I can be for getting pregnant again, because I do think a lot of my aches and pains later on in pregnancy were due to the fact that I wasn't going into it very healthy. Because we had miscarried and then we got married, there was a 3-month sort of, well, between miscarrying and getting pregnant again. I miscarried in July and I got pregnant again in the October, and in that time I did pretty much nothing for my health. So I think that played a big part in my pregnancy being so difficult. Now, onto the birth story. Sorry that was such a long backstory, but I think it's important to know. So, at 38 weeks and 2 days, I think it was, I had a growth scan. Harper was measuring very small for her gestation, which we weren't surprised by. I'm very short, Hayden is very short. We come from very small families, so we weren't surprised if we were going to have a small baby. I would have been more surprised if I had a big baby. So we went in for our third growth scan. We had one at 32 weeks, 36 weeks, and now 38 weeks, because our 36-week one did show that she was really small. So we went and had our growth scan, and then we had our appointment. Now, the day before our appointment, I started getting very strong tightenings. I had already experienced a lot of Braxton Hicks, so I knew that these weren't quite Braxton Hicks because they were quite painful. Now, that happened on the Thursday. On the Friday, we had our appointment. I messaged my student midwife and said, like, you know, this is what's happening. I'm getting a lot of tightenings. They're quite close together, like within 5 minutes of each other. They're very uncomfortable. Not super, super painful, but they are very uncomfortable. So we went to the doctor and he was like, yep, cool. It looks like you're pretty much getting ready to go into labor. Like, it looks like you're in early labor. He said, you're 1 centimeter dilated. He gave me a stretch and sweep and basically said, you'll probably have her this weekend. By the looks of how uncomfortable your contractions clearly are and the fact that you're 1 centimeter, your cervix is starting to thin out a little bit, I would be getting ready, like, you'll probably have your baby this weekend. And I was like, that is amazing, because I'm so over being pregnant. So we went home and I sort of messaged our families and said sort of like, you know, she's probably gonna be here this weekend. We'll keep you guys updated. I'm having pretty regular contractions. We're gonna go home. I'm gonna go on the, like, on my exercise ball and drink raspberry leaf tea and just do everything in my power to bring on this labor and get it, you know, moving along. She didn't come that weekend. We walked, we did literally everything that is in every book or Facebook group post about trying to, like, naturally induce labor, and nothing worked. But my contractions were pretty painful. Like, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, they would have been like a 7, which for me, I was like, that should be like what early labor is, right? Like, you know, that's how it works. We spent that whole weekend trying to get me into hard labor. Nothing happened, nothing worked. My contractions were still just consistently pretty painful, like 5 minutes apart. I was messaging my midwife, like I had a student midwife, she was amazing. I messaged her lots and we just sort of kept going. I barely slept because I was having these contractions pretty regularly. I was so uncomfortable, it was really, really rough. And then we basically just continued like that. I rang up like the midwife, like the birthing suite, and they said, yep, just basically keep going, have showers, go in the bath, blah blah blah, do all these things. We can't admit you until you like can't talk through your contractions, basically. I was like, cool, awesome. So that went on for like a whole week. On the Tuesday, I did go into the hospital and they gave me another stretch and sweep, and I was 2 centimeters, and she was like, yep, you just gotta keep riding this wave. So I just kept going. I then also lost my mucus plug and had my bloody show. I won't get into details about that, but if you want to know what a bloody show is, you can look that up yourself. It's not very nice, but I had mine. So I was like, cool. Like, generally after a bloody show, it's pretty common to then like be in labor within 48 hours. I was like, cool, she'll be here by the end of the week. Like, you know, by Thursday or Friday. This was Tuesday or Wednesday by this point. I was like, she'll be here soon. And at this point, like, I told a few of my friends, like my closest friends, like sort of what was happening. So everyone was checking in on me all the time, which was so nice, but I was like miserable. So then it gets to Saturday, still the same situation. Saturday night, my contractions became pretty unbearable. Like, I knew that the pain I was experiencing was turning into real labor. I was like, these are getting so much worse. I literally cannot sleep through them. So we ended up going into the hospital, and we got there at about 11:15 p.m. on Saturday, the 3rd of July. We get there and the lady asked if my waters had broken. I said no. And then, well, I went to the toilet when we first arrived, and I felt like my bladder, I felt my underwear was very wet. But that late in pregnancy, honestly, there's a lot going on all the time. There's a lot of discharge, there's a lot of urine. You never really know. And I sort of said to her, like, look, my undies were pretty wet, but I honestly couldn't tell you if it was discharge or this or that. Like, I don't know at this point. So she was like, cool, no worries, we can check for you. Like, they do a swab and they check, and I was like, yep, that's fine. I was in so much pain at this point, and they put like the CTG monitor on me, and they could see that my contractions were really, really, really strong. So they were watching on the monitor. They were super short staffed, and so it was a bit like hectic for a minute. Like, I got left for like 3 hours or something just with the monitor on. I was in absolute agony. I was getting to the point where no position was comfortable. I was like rocking on the bed, I was standing, I was sitting, I was on all fours, all in this like little room, because I hadn't been admitted to like the birthing suite or anything. I was just in like their assessment area basically. So there was another woman like in the same room as me, and she had just given birth at 28 weeks or 32 weeks or something to a little premature baby, and she had had a C-section. So we could like hear her and her partner and her like mother-in-law all like chatting, and I was just like breathing through these horrendous contractions, and I was up and I was down. And then when I was sitting down, like, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes after we got there, it literally felt like I weed myself. Like, my whole bum just got like drenched. And when the lady came back in, I was like, I'm pretty sure my waters have just broke, because I know it's not wee, and I am now sitting in a puddle. And I stood up and like my undies were drenched and the whole bed was wet, and I was like, yeah. From there, no one tells you this. Well, I didn't know this, but you literally just like keep leaking amniotic fluid for like hours. So I then put on like a nappy, because I was like, it's just trickling down my legs. All my leggings and my undies were ruined like already, and we'd been there like 10 minutes. So then, yeah, we spent the next few hours just sitting there in absolute agony. No one checked me for ages, and so I was like, surely by now I'm gonna be like pretty far along. Like, I'm dying. And Hayden was like trying to rub my back and get on my pressure points, and I was just in so much pain. Like, I cannot even explain to you the pain that I was going through. And they were pretty close together. Like, every few minutes I was like, oh, it was horrible. So then they checked me, and I was 2 centimeters still. My cervix was still long. It had thinned out like a tiny bit, but really I was very, very, very far off giving birth. And the lady literally was like, look, usually we would send someone home at this point. If they were to come in 2 centimeters, you go home and you labor at home. But we can see on the monitors that your contractions are so intense. She's like, I can give you some, what did she give me? Like Panadine Fort, I think. And something else. They gave me another type of painkiller. And she was like, look, you are never going to get comfortable in this tiny little space. Like, I was in a space smaller than this bedroom. Like, it was like the size of a large ensuite, a large bathroom. So she was like, we're going to move you into a specific room that we usually don't just give anyone, but it's the midwifery practice room, and we want you to try and get some sleep. We're going to give you some heat bags. Here's a little bit of painkillers. Try and get some sleep. And we went in and had like, it was the big room. We had a double bed. I got maybe an hour worth of sleep. I had heat bags on my front and on my back. Hayden had a bit of a nap, which was great. And we moved in there, I think, at like 3 a.m. So I'd already been at the hospital for over 4 hours and was hardcore struggling. I then, yeah, slept for maybe like an hour, maybe. Like, just tried to watch some stuff on Netflix to keep myself occupied. And then it got to about 7 o'clock in the morning, and they then were like, yep, we're going to recheck you. I'm just double checking my notes because I feel like I could forget things. Oh, okay, so yeah, when I was 2 centimeters dilated, my cervix was still 2 centimeters long. I then pretty much was just in that room until 9 a.m, just struggling through the pain. They checked me again, and I was 3 centimeters. So literally had progressed 1 centimeter in like 10 hours by then. So that was... Then they said that I could go on the gas. They were like, do you want some higher pain relief? Do you want to go on the gas? I was like, yes, please give me the gas. At this point, I was literally like, I couldn't really control the contractions. Like, I was losing control every time they were coming, basically. And I was just really, really struggling. So then they gave me the gas, and by about 11, I had managed to get to a 4. So this is 12 hours later from when they first, like from when I arrived, and my waters broke at 11. So, gosh, thinking back, I'm like, wow, what a time. So then, yeah, got to 11 o'clock. They gave me the gas. That was great. And they then discovered that I had an infection. Every time they had done my obs, my heart rate was really high and my temp was really high. My heart rate was at like 135 or something. So it was, Ziggy, stop that. My heart rate was at like 135, which was then matching Harper's on the heart rate monitor, and it kept like beeping because it couldn't tell if her heart rate was my heart rate or vice versa. So basically, because I was matching hers, the monitor just kept going off every like 5 minutes and like screaming at us. Basically, it was a nightmare. So then they ended up putting an internal heart rate monitor on Harper's head. So then they got this like long little spirally thing and like screwed it to her head basically, and they then had her heart rate her heart rate was separate to mine. With them finding out I had an infection, I was then on IV antibiotics as well, so they did that every 4 hours or so to bring my heart rate and my temp down a little bit. So then I had like the IV that I was hooked to, the CT scan that I was, or the CTG that I was hooked up to, and this cord now going inside me to her head, screwed for her heart rate. And I was still trying to labour standing up at this point. Like I was really trying to like move and get my hips and get her to descend. So then I finally asked for the epidural. I was like, I cannot do this any longer. I am in so much agony. The gas was helping a bit, but I just could not control the contractions anymore. And I had been in this, like I'd already had like a week of pre-labor. I had been at the hospital for over 12 hours. I was like, just help me, please. So then it gets to 12:15 and they're like, yep, we're gonna put the epidural in. I was like, amazing. So the anaesthetist comes, he tells me the risks. I'm like, yep, like barely even existing. But Hayden and I had already spoke about it, and I said like that I would have the epidural if I was getting to the point where my body wasn't progressing and that I was exhausted, which was 100% where I was at. So then I got the epidural. It took the anaesthetist, whatever you call him, 9 attempts to get it in my back. 9. So it was like 45 minutes worth of him like attempting basically to get this epidural in. I had all these little scabs on my back after. So it took him 45 minutes, 9 attempts, and when it then was in, what happens is you get this thing that like it's in your back and then it comes up round the side and you get a button to press. And so every 15 minutes you like press the button to keep the epidural going. So if you're then not in as much pain, you don't have to use it as often, or if you're in agony, you can pretty much just have it constantly going. It does max out, you can only do it 4 times in the hour, like you can't like overdose on it. So once you've pressed it, it then has like a countdown of 15 minutes, and then once that 15 minutes is up, you can press it again. If you don't press it like in that time, you can sort of get a little bit more feeling inside, like on your legs and stuff, or, you know, you pretty much just try and keep yourself as numb as possible. So when I got that, we discovered pretty quickly that the button only worked if I was in certain positions, if I was like hunched over or on my sides. So if I was just sitting normally, the button didn't work, which, plot twist, the position that I had to give birth in was not one of the positions that worked. So at this point they figured out that she was posterior, which means her face was facing upwards. So not breech, like her feet weren't coming first, but instead of her head being down, her spine was against my spine and she was gonna come face up, sunny side up, they say. So they were like, all right, we wanna try and turn her naturally. Let's get you on your side. So I went on my side and had this big, they called it a peanut. It was like a giant exercise ball, but in like a peanut shape. It was huge, like this. And I had to have that between my legs, and I was on my side. So I laid on my right side for like an hour, and they were like, all right, let's turn. So I turned, but when I turned onto my left side, Harper's heart rate either spiked or dropped. So in the end, like we tried a few times, and I was struggling to turn over anyway because my legs were like numb, especially the leg that was underneath, because not only did I have the epidural, but then I was like just on one side. So my leg, that leg was like gone. So yeah, we tried a few times, but her heart rate just kept dropping or would spike. And they basically said like it's safer to just leave you on your right side. So I literally laid like this, and I ended up being in that position for about 7 hours. It got to 7:30 p.m. So this is now Sunday the 4th of July, if that didn't make sense, by the way. So it got to 7:30 p.m. I had been on my side since like 12:30, and I'd had my antibiotics come in and out. Her heart rate thing fell out like 3 times, so they had to keep redoing that. There was a couple of scares in there where like it looked like her heart just stopped, but actually her monitor just came off and was like floating around. So then yeah, we get to 7:30, they come in, they check me, and I'm at a 7 centimeters. So still not ready. It had been a very long time by this point, and they basically said, look, your body is not really doing what it needs to. We are going to give you 2 more hours for your body to get to a 10, and if not, we will have to intervene and give you a cesarean section. Now at this point I was exhausted, and I was like, I don't even care anymore, just cut her out of me. But what they did was they put me on the hormone drip, and they were like, cool, let's, you know, get your contractions a little bit more intense. You've got the epidural, so, you know, let's get this ball rolling. So then they checked me again at 9:15, and I was finally at 10 centimeters. And I was exhausted by this point. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I even still awake? Like I hadn't really slept in like a whole week, and then like the last 24 hours I had maybe like 2 hours. So then they told me we will wait 1 hour, and then we will like for you to naturally descend a little bit more, and then we'll get pushing. So they sort of just let me chill, blah blah blah. Now just before, like I literally was in the position where I was just about to start pushing, and a doctor comes in. Now this doctor was lovely. We had actually dealt with her before. She was beautiful. She had dealt with us when we had some complications earlier in the pregnancy. So we knew her, she was lovely. She probably didn't remember me. She goes, I'm going to try and turn your baby. Because in that 7 hours of me being on the ball, Harper had not turned. So at this point, I'm then like straight again with my back, and like my legs are up, ready to push. And she goes, I'm going to try and turn her myself before you start pushing. So they get the ultrasound like probe out, and you can see that her head is like facing the wrong way. She literally like elbow deeps me, like and like at this point, because the epidural kind of starts running out like pretty quick, I feel like, if you're not pressing the button, and the epidural was no longer working, like I couldn't press the button again. So from like this time till forever, the epidural was slowly wearing off. So then I could literally feel her like all the way up, and you can see on the monitor, and she's like turning Harper's head, and it sort of like turns a bit, and then she lets go and she goes back, and she tried again, and she tried for I think like half an hour to try and turn Harper's head, and it did not happen. So then she told me pushing is going to be really hard, because the way that a baby's skull is shaped is to go through the birth canal a certain way. We are now going the opposite way, so her head has to like really be pushed and like morphed through the birth canal. I was like, awesome, cool. So I then start pushing. It's 10 at this point, and I push, or 10:15, I think, 20 past, something like that. And I pushed and pushed my little heart out. It was the most exhausting HIIT workout of my life. I pushed for 1 hour and 20 minutes, and they were all saying like how amazing I was doing. I was like, I cannot do this any longer. And Hayden, bless him, was just like the best little cheerleader, saying how good I was doing. And then they're like, her head's like there, do you want us to get a mirror, like, do you want to see it? And I was like, nah, I'm fine, thanks. And they're like, well, do you want to feel it? Like, it might give you some inspiration to like keep going. And I felt down, and I could feel her head, and it was all slimy and weird, but it was really cool. And I was like, yeah, cool. So then they're like, all right, we're pretty close. And no one's ever told me this before, but when you push, they then get to well, I don't know if this is everyone or just like my experience, but no one ever told me that this was a thing. She goes, all right, we're gonna get you to push, and then in the middle of a contraction, we're gonna tell you to stop pushing and just breathe. I was like, okay. So I'm pushing and pushing, you know, I push for a minute at a time or whatever, however often the contractions are. And then they're like, okay, stop. Now, they didn't tell me that when I was gonna stop was gonna be like the peak of my body being stretched to the max. Like, it's when the biggest part of her head is like right there. So it was agonizing. Like, I think I felt my tear at that point. So yeah, they then say like stop. So then you hold there for a second, and then they're like, okay, push again. And obviously, like, I've just been pushing with all my might, like as hard as I possibly can. So obviously I did that again, and she literally flew out. It was the weirdest thing. She literally, it was like bloop, and she was out. And then they like put her on my, well, they were like patting her for a second and like making sure she started breathing and crying, and then they popped her on my chest, and it was like, I don't know, I had this weird feeling. I just kept saying like, oh my god, she's here, oh my god, she's here. I just couldn't believe that she was actually here, and like my midwife was taking photos of us and stuff, and I just couldn't believe she was here. But I felt so like out of it at that point. Like, I just didn't really know what was happening. I was like slightly delirious probably, like I was so exhausted. So then she's on my chest, Hayden's crying, I'm crying, we're like, oh my god, she's here. I can't even really see her face because she's like right here. Hayden's looking at her, but I'm like, don't even know really what she looks like at this point. And then the doctor says, or the midwife says like, all right, Kirsty, I'm gonna have to press the red button, and there's gonna be a lot of people coming in, but you're hemorrhaging, you're losing a lot of blood. I was like, okay. And they were like, should we give baby to dad? So Hayden takes Harper and I hemorrhage, and they I actually feel sick thinking about this bit, but they push down. Oh, also before that, sorry, they did my injection, got my placenta out, that was fine. They showed us the placenta, that was really cool. So then they're like, you're hemorrhaging, so like they press the red buzzer thing, like the emergency thing, and like 8,000 people come running in, and she literally is pressing on my stomach, like pressing down to like seep all of the blood out. And I ended up losing 1.6 litres of blood in like a very short period of time, making sure I haven't forgotten anything. So yeah, I lost 1.6 litres of blood. Luckily I didn't have to go into theatre, because if you lose a certain amount, you've then got to have like a blood transfusion and stuff, but luckily I didn't lose too much. Harper was born with a very funny shaped head. The time I then pushed her out was at 11:34, so it was like over 24 hours from my waters breaking and being in the hospital. Yeah, I then hemorrhaged. Hayden had Harper, and then like a team came in to stitch me up because I had 2 little tears on the top and the bottom. They said they were very, very minor. I had a couple stitches. I actually don't even really know how many stitches. It took forever. I had to go back on the gas because I was just done. It took so long for them to do, which I couldn't understand if there was only a couple, but they obviously have to do it right, and wanted to make sure my recovery was good. And yeah, that was my birth. It was honestly so crazy. I don't know how to explain it, because I wouldn't quite say that it was like traumatic, but I definitely had a hard time. I had a hard pregnancy, a hard birth, and the first week of her life was really hard. Like, we really struggled with breastfeeding. She had really bad jaundice. We ended up back in the hospital. She got diagnosed with hip dysplasia. Like, the first little bit was just really hard, but life just got better and better and better, and now having her is just like the best thing in the whole world, and she's amazing and I'm obsessed with her. But yeah, that is the story of how Harper came to be here. She is the light of our lives, and it's so weird, like I hated being pregnant. Oh no, I didn't hate being pregnant, I just struggled so much the whole time. Like, there was barely any days where I like felt good, and like I cried almost the whole time, and then birth was just so rough. But I can't wait to get pregnant again and to bring Harper a sibling, which I just think like, how stupid am I? How crazy am I? But yeah, if you listened to that whole story, congratulations, because that was long. I feel like when I tell it to people, I do a really condensed version and just say like this, and you know, really shorten it down. But I'm really glad now I've got this to look back at, because I feel like the longer time goes, I will forget. And I would love for Harper to really know when she gets older, like how she entered the world. And although it was really exhausting and tiring and really, really hard, it was worth every single second. And I don't think childbirth is something to be scared of. Like, we've got to do it to get our babies. And although it was a really, really hard time, as I said, I can't wait to do it again. So I don't know if that makes me crazy or not, but it's just the most magical thing in the whole world. Like, growing a baby and birthing a human is just beyond anything I could ever comprehend, really. So I'm gonna stop rambling, because I've literally spoke for like over half an hour, and this video is gonna be so long. So if you've managed to listen to all of it, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know that's a long time out of your day to listen to someone's birth story, but now you know all the ins and outs of what happened. I hope, if you did enjoy it, please give this video a thumbs up and comment down below. I love having chats with you people in the comments. And yeah, that is my birth story, done, finished, for another year or so until I decide to go again. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video, which will be very, very soon. Bye.